Hey y'all, I'm Melissa Guerra. I am the Kitchen Wrangler, and today we're going to be making pumpkin empanadas, which is an absolute classic here on the border of Texas. But before we get too far into this recipe, I want to remind you, make sure you subscribe to my channel where you're going to get all of my favorite recipes from here in South Texas. It's such a joy and a pleasure to share these recipes with you. So make sure you subscribe so you can get all of my recipes right here. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get started on these pumpkin empanadas. This is my recipe, so I'm going to show you how I make them at home. So I use fresh pumpkin and I make the crust from absolute scratch as well. I do have some hacks to make them. Are they easier? I don't know if they're easier, but they are better. I think they're better. Through the years, I've eaten a lot of empanadas and they're never incredibly sweet. Like we think of birthday cake as being really sweet. Empanadas come way below that in terms of sweetness. And so we have them a lot of times for breakfast. Occasionally you can have them for dessert. In my experience, it's usually a different crust with a lot more sugar when they're made for dessert. This is more of a breakfast recipe. Even though we're making the crust from scratch, I'm gonna make it a little bit easier by using a food processor. If you don't have a food processor and you just have a bowl and a spoon, it'll still work, but I love the food processor because it gets the job done really fast. First, we're gonna add our dry ingredients. I have all-purpose flour, baking powder, a little salt, and a little sugar, and I'm gonna pulse it together. I've got some cold butter that I've cut into cubes, and I'm gonna add that to our food processor and pulse it just a couple of times, and it's gonna chop up those little butter pieces until they are the perfect size. And that's what's gonna give us a flaky crust. Next, we need to add 3 eggs to our empanada dough, which is gonna give it a gorgeous richness. And we're gonna add some cold water, but be careful, don't add all of the water all at once, because you know, whenever you make anything with flour, there's just different levels of moisture, and you're never quite sure exactly how much water to add. So just start by adding a little bit and run your food processor. When you start to see the dough gather up into a ball, turn off the processor and stop adding water, because we want this dough to be flaky and light. If you overwork your dough with the food processor, or if you add too much water, you're gonna end up with a tough crust. I need to start saying that. Hey, tough crust. Once the dough has come together, then we're going to put it in a bowl and we're gonna pop it in the fridge for 1 hour. Let's make the pumpkin filling. I picked up a pumpkin at the supermarket, and you might notice it does not look like a jack-o'-lantern pumpkin. Different pumpkins have different flavors and different levels of moisture. The one that I picked up, we call a calabaza de Castilla. It's also called a white pumpkin. Some people call them Cinderella pumpkins. I don't. Some people do, I don't. But it has a really great flavor and it has much lower moisture. I was super surprised when I chopped this pumpkin open and it had been out in the heat for a while and the seeds had sprouted. Not great, but not terrible. There's nothing wrong with this pumpkin. I'm gonna use it anyway, but it's a little nerve-wracking to see all those little sprouts in there, but sprouts are sprouts. It's not gonna hurt you. Once you get all the inside of your pumpkin cleaned out, then you're gonna chop up the pumpkin. Let me tell you, friends, that is super satisfying, taking a cleaver to a pumpkin. I don't care what kind of week you've had, chopping up a pumpkin is so satisfying. Lay the pieces of pumpkin out on a parchment-lined pan and we're gonna pop it in the oven for an hour. I also put a little bit of olive oil on my pieces of pumpkin so that they didn't dry out. Look at those, they're so gorgeous and steamy, but let's let them cool off for a bit. Once the pumpkin pieces are cool, scrape out the inside flesh and we're gonna put the flesh into a bowl. You'll notice that there is liquid coming out of this pumpkin, and like I said, I never know what kind of moisture level these pumpkins will have. Experienced cooks might think, she should really cook that down. I hear ya, but I have done that before and it scorches sometimes. I prefer just to let it drain. You can put the pumpkin in a colander, or you can just kind of scoot the pumpkin to the side, and I actually put a spoon under my bowl so that it would tilt the bowl, and so all of the liquid ran to one side and the nice pumpkin flesh, the pulp, it stayed on the other side of the bowl. Sometimes low tech is the way to go. Once you've drained off the moisture from that pumpkin, pumpkin. Then we can add some sugar. I'm adding a little cinnamon. This is a very simple filling recipe. I'm only adding cinnamon, but if you want to add cloves, allspice, anise, anything, maple, you can do whatever you want, but this for me is a very classic pumpkin filling. So now I want to share with you my biggest hack for making pumpkin empanadas. Make the pumpkin and the dough 1 day in advance. If you're running short on time, of course you can make your empanadas all in 1 hour. That's fine. However, if you let the dough sit overnight, you will notice that it is so much easier to roll out. It's not as sticky, it's much more resilient, it's a much better dough. The pumpkin too, all of that moisture drains away overnight as well. But yeah, sometimes we have empanada emergencies and you have to produce them really quickly. So you can make these empanadas in an hour and a half, but really the best way to make them is to make the dough and the filling a day in advance and then assemble the empanadas the next day. Take one of the portions of dough, roll it in your hands and roll it around on the flour and then make a flat patty. Make sure you have enough flour so that none of the dough sticks to your surface. Roll it out into a circle, add a spoonful of your sweetened filling, and then we're going to press the edge so the edge of the empanada seals very well. Now watch closely because I'm going to show you how to make the perfect braided edge of an empanada. You're going to start at a corner and you pull out the corner. We're going to exaggerate a bit here. We're going to pull the corner out and then we're going to loop it over. Now we're going to move a centimeter to the right and then we're going to pull a piece of dough out and we're going to loop it over. So make these exaggerated tabs and pull them over, and if you keep following this pattern, you're going to end up with that beautifully shaped edge. I had always wondered how to do it and I finally figured it out. Now if yours don't turn out all that beautiful, let me tell you, when you bake them, they will actually look better later. So have faith, just keep working on it. Once all of your empanadas are shaped, place them on a parchment paper lined pan and pop them in the oven. They're going to take about 25 to 30 minutes to bake. Sometimes people like to put an egg wash on their empanada, and all that does, it gives it like a little shine on the crust. So scrambled 1 egg, add a teaspoon of water, and you can brush that on the crust of the empanada before you bake it. Now that the empanadas are baked, I want to put a little bit of sugar on the outside because remember, the filling didn't have a lot of sugar, so I want to put a little bit of crispy granulated sugar on the outside. I'm making a little glaze with a spoonful of honey mixed with a teaspoon of water. Brush that over the warm empanada, and then I made some cinnamon sugar and I'm going to sprinkle that over the top. Look at that. We made empanadas with fresh dough and fresh pumpkin filling. These are gorgeous and they are so delicious for breakfast. They're so incredible with coffee. They're all over there. I'm fixing to dig in. You know, if you have any recipe requests or questions, you can message me at help@kitchenwrangler.com, or you can message me through Instagram, through Facebook, through TikTok, through Twitter, through YouTube, through my blog. There are so many ways to contact me because I'm always really looking forward to hearing from you. I'm Melissa Guerra, I'm the Kitchen Wrangler, and I'm looking forward to seeing you here at the ranch again soon. Bye now.